Today's concept, I want to introduce you like a case study, but this is not exactly a case study. It's more of a scenario that we are now facing. Let's say there are these 5 groups. One is the farmer group, second is the workers, next is the children, there is elderly, and there is the rich. And there are, let's say, about 100 apples to be distributed among them. There are various criteria of distributing these 100 apples among the farmers, the workers, the children, the elderly, and the rich. So how are you going to distribute them? You need certain criteria on which you are going to distribute these apples, how much you go to each. Now let's say we bring in this philosopher, Aristotle. Now how will Aristotle distribute, if these are the 5 groups to be distributed, what criteria will Aristotle use? Yes?
Virtual values.
Not virtual values, because there will be good people in all of them and then there will be bad people in all of them. Aristotle has this criteria: need and contribution. Don't you think you should be taking this down? Okay. So Aristotle has this criteria on which he distributes or allocates something, that we call it as need and contribution. Based on each individual's need and their contribution, he is going to select how many apples are going to go for each section. Now with respect to farmers, they contribute also, they need also. So probably he is going to give 25. Same with the workers, they have the need and they contribute as well. So 25. There is no strict criteria. I am allocating this. I am just explaining you the need and contribution aspect of Aristotle. Rich people, they need also and they contribute also again. So 25. Whereas children and elderly, they are mostly in need. They do not contribute much. So they will get a lesser share, probably 15 and 10. Now let's say there is Rawls. You must have read about Rawls' theory of justice. Right? So in the Rawls theory of justice, what will Rawls use to allocate these resources is called the difference principle. In Rawls theory of justice, there is a difference principle. Now what does the difference principle says? It says inequality can exist as long as the most vulnerable are benefiting out of that inequality. Again I repeat, the difference principle says of Rawls, inequality can exist as long as even the most vulnerable benefit out of this. So he will use that difference principle to allocate these apples. So who are the most vulnerable here? Elderly and the children. Okay, so he will probably allocate 30 apples each. Then for the workers, 15. And how much are remaining? 10, right? That will go to the church. So Rawls will use the principle of difference. Now let's bring in Marx. You all have read Marx. Even if not in ethics, you might have read him in your economy. You all know who is getting 0 here? Who is getting 0? Definitely. Now, before we can allocate, so what is this principle?
Workers number basis. Who has spent most and then workers produce
Okay.
have more rights.
Those who produce have more rights?
Yes.
The principle, I want to see the principle, like how you put difference, need and contribution. You are all going towards world history and economy from ethics point of view. From each, remember this, from each according to their capability, to each according to their need. So remember this, internalize it, from each according to their capability. So the asset or the resource transfer is happening from each according to their capability, and it is happening to each according to their need. So based on each individual's capability we are taking, and based on each individual's need we are giving, from each according to their capability to each according to their need. And 0, okay, probably 30 here, 30 here, and 20 and 20. Right. Let's go to a couple of modern day thinkers. So Nozick is a modern day thinker, this century only. Nozick is a modern day thinker. His philosophy is simple. Redistribution should not happen. Whatever is mine, it's mine. Whatever is yours, yours. No need of taxation. So, like, if farmer has produced, he will keep all the 100 apples unless the rich man buys it. He can buy 100 apples, 1000 apples, doesn't matter. Whoever has it, keeps it. So, Nozick will not redistribute anything. But if you look at one more modern day philosopher, especially from our country, Amartya Sen, what is the approach known as? Capability approach. So now, according to capability, it is very close to what Rawls tells. So children and elderly will get the major share. Workers and farmers will get little less, and rich will get little more. Less. So these are the different ways of allocating resources based on a lot of ancient philosophers and a couple of modern day thinkers. There is one more approach, very simple approach, egalitarian approach. Egalitarian means very simple. What is it? Everybody is going to get 20 apples each. Egalitarian thinkers tell everybody equal, irrespective of their capacities, capabilities, contributions, needs, everybody are going to get 20 apples each. Now, what is this? If you have to see, what exactly what were we now doing so far with this table and everything? So we are talking about distributive justice, the principle of ethical principle of distributive justice, and how various philosophers think about this distributive justice in their own terms. This is nothing but distributive justice. There are 3 principles of distributive justice. Very simple. Remember fee, fairness, equity, equality. Fee, fairness, equity, equality. So if at all you have to base out of distributive justice, these are the 3 principles: fairness, equity and equality. But there can be other criteria. Apart from these are the 3 principles, there can be other criteria which you can use to allocate resources. One is the need that we just spoke about. Then you can also use merit. Need is one, merit is one. For rich people, entitlement can be one more. And then the equality. So other criteria, these are the principles, but to allocate resources, you can also allocate based on need, you can allocate based on merit, you can allocate based on equality, you can allocate based on entitlement. So that is also one more criteria of allotment. And the distributive justice as an ethical principle allocates resources based on fairness, equality and equity. As simple as that. That is what distributive justice is, and that is what we have learned today. And that based on that, we are going to write a answer. One thing I want to make it clear is the questions that come in your exam in GS4 are most likely going to be application based. They will not ask what is distributive justice. What philosophers talk about distributive justice. But we study what is distributive justice, what philosophers talk about the distributive justice. But the thing here is, generally the questions will be always based on the application. Now here we have to see how distributive justice can guide solutions to climate change. I think introduction is fairly simple. You start by the principle of distributive justice, fairness, equality, equity, and I think some of you have also put a triangle showing fairness, equality, equity. Yeah, fair enough. Now coming to the body, when I was walking around, many of you have directly used philosophers. What I just discussed, Aristotle, you have used Rawls. No, that's not the answer here. And some of you must have made it like GS3. Sustainability, mitigation. I was having a look at a couple of your answers. Again, that is also not the right approach. So the right approach is when GS3 meets philosophers. Okay. So you start off from GS3 and you make them meet the philosophers that we just discussed, and then you get the answer for the body for this. So if you can see here, now with respect to the climate change, what principles of distributive justice can guide? We can start with fairness in allocation of funds, because this is one major issue that is happening. Fairness in allocation of funds. And how do you substantiate it? We have the loss and damage fund, right? Not just that. You have to link it to one of the philosophers. You can put difference principle of Rawls here. Here, in the loss and damage fund, the rich countries should take care of the most vulnerable, because we are acknowledging the existence of inequality. We are acknowledging the existence of inequality. We are just ensuring, despite that inequality, the vulnerable countries are taken care of. The next part can be here, accountability for historical emissions. Now there is a lot of pressure on the developing countries, or least developing countries, to cut down their emissions. The developing countries can afford to do so because they are very well developed. But we still have our needs, accountability for historical emissions. And we can clearly justify it by need and contribution approach. Need and contribution approach of? Who was it? Aristotle. Because the developing countries need still to emit those emissions. But since the developing countries have already exhausted and contributed to their fair share of emissions, they have to taper. And next could be accessibility to resources. What resources here? Clean energy resources or climate neutral technologies. Clean energy resources or climate neutral technology, or any sort of green technology. What principle can I put? You can put capability approach, but since it's a modern thinker, you can go for utilitarianism. See, most of you, whatever answers I have seen so far, will either go with utilitarian or deontology. Hardly you use any other philosophers. In ethics, apart from Mill, Bentham and Kant, there are other philosophers which you should and which you must use. So here, utilitarian approach will be there. Maximum good for maximum people. When the green technologies penetrate, maximum good for maximum people. And finally, we can also bring in this angle of global cooperation. Because we need to cooperate, otherwise we are going to perish together. And here we can use the philosophy of BK. BK is not Virat Kohli Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Okay, one of the cliched philosophies. Okay, so we can use the philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. How do we conclude this? Here, okay, it is pertinent for us to put aside our differences, work together in the interest of sustainability, cooperate, overcome our differences while maximizing the benefits for the betterment of entire humankind. As simple as that.